Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to our virtual classroom. Today, we're going to be looking at lesson 13-2, which is solving addition equations. Now, this is perhaps one of the most important lessons of the whole year, something that we're going to be using a lot, not only for addition equations, but also for subtraction, multiplication, and division equations, right? So as we're talking about solving equations in general, ladies and gentlemen, we have to be aware of this, which is the inverse operations. Now, we've looked at the word inverse before, and that simply means the opposite. So when we're talking about inverse operations, we're really talking about the opposite operations. So when solving equations, we always need to be aware of the operation that we're doing at the moment and the opposite operation of the one that we're doing in the moment. For example, if we have addition, we know that the opposite of addition is subtraction and vice versa. The opposite of subtraction would be addition. And we know that the opposite of multiplication would be division. And the opposite of division would obviously be multiplication, etc. And so, and here is just an example of how that might actually look. But keeping that in mind, keeping opposite operations in mind, let's use those to solve equations. So the question becomes, how do we solve equations? How can I go ahead and actually solve an equation? Well, ladies and gentlemen, the way that we solve equations, okay, in inequalities, our goal when solving equations is to isolate the variable. That is what we're trying to do when solving equations. We are trying to isolate the variable. Now, what does that mean? Well, we know that a variable is usually a letter or symbol, so we can use X. And the word isolate, I believe most of you are familiar with it. It simply means to have it be all by itself. That's what isolate means, right? When somebody is sick with COVID or something like that, and they don't want to be contagious, they are isolated. They are set apart so that there's no one around them. So that is what we're going to do with the variable. For example, given this equation, 4 plus x is equal to 7, in order to solve this equation, we want to get to the point where it's just x is equal to something. In other words, notice how there's nothing around the x. The x is completely by itself. All right. Another way to look at this is to start looking at equations as having a left side and a right side. For example, here's the equal sign. And here we have the left side of the equation. It is to the left of the equal sign, and the right side of the equation. It is to the right of the equal sign. And ladies and gentlemen, we want to find the variable and ask ourselves, is the variable isolated? Is it all by itself? Well, here on the left side, it clearly is not isolated at the moment. Why is it not isolated? Because we have an addition and we have a 4. It is not isolated. It is not by itself because we're adding 4 to the variable. All right, so how can we isolate the variable? What must we do to isolate the x? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to use the inverse operation. We're going to use the opposite operation. So here, in order to isolate the x, I need to do the opposite of adding 4, which is to subtract 4. And that's it. 4 minus 4 will equal 0. That would cancel it out. However, ladies and gentlemen, if we can think of an equation as a scale, okay, here's the left side and here's the right side. If I take something off of the scale, if I take something off of the left side, if I subtract 4, what's going to happen to the scale? Is it going to be equal anymore? No, it is going to be tipped. And for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, whatever I do to one side, I must also do to the other. So if I subtracted 4 on the left side to isolate the x, I must subtract 4 from the right side to balance it out. So 7 minus 4 will give me 3. In other words, the value of x has to be 3. Notice what happens whenever I put a 3 in place of x. Is 4 plus 3 equal to 7? It is. So I know that 3 is a solution for this equation. So really what is happening here, ladies and gentlemen, is number 1, our goal with equations is to isolate the variable. We want the variable to be all by itself. How am I going to do that? Number 2, I'm going to use the opposite operation, the inverse operation. So here, x was not isolated here on the left side. So I use subtraction. I use the opposite operation. And number 3, whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other. So if I had to subtract 4 to isolate the x, then I have to subtract 4 from the right side from the other side so that it is balanced. And ladies and gentlemen, that whatever is left over, that will be my solution. So number one, isolate the variable. Number two, use the opposite operation. And number three, and this is super important, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side of the equation. And so that's precisely what we've done here, ladies and gentlemen. 4 plus x, same thing as x plus 4. I want to isolate the variable, so I subtracted 4, and whatever I did to one side, I did to the other. And so 7 minus 4 is equal to 3. So how does that look like in our assignment today? Well, if I go to OneNote, and if I go up to number 1, notice that it says that Samantha has scored 2,160 points. That's how many points she has. To win the current level, she needs to have 8,500 points. And the question is, how many more points does she need to score to win the level? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's write an equation. We're trying to get to 8,500 points. Now, I know this lesson has to do with addition, but looking at the question, notice that it says how many more points, meaning we need addition. And we need to add the points that we have, which is 2,160 plus the points that I'm missing. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my equation, by the way. That is the answer to number 1A in Schoology. Blank 1, blank 2, blank 3. 2,160 plus x, my variable, is equal to 8,500. So now, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and solve this equation. Let's isolate the variable. Is the variable isolated right now here on the left side? No, it is not, because I am adding 2,160. So what is the opposite of adding 2,160? We can subtract 2,160. And whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I must subtract 2,160 from this side as well. So 2,160 minus 2,160 is 0, leaving me with just x isolated. Bring down the equal sign. And now 8,500 minus 2,160, we get 10 minus 6 is 4, 4 minus 1 is 3. We get 6,340. That is my final answer, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you found this video helpful. And just a heads up on number 2 on Schoology, it says 2A and 2B. 2A would be the equation and 2B would be the answer. What is the variable on that equation? That is going to be the case for the rest of the problems in this assignment today. Once again, I hope that you found this helpful. And with that in mind, I will see you next time.